begin your probiotic supplement as well as sauerkraut juice, not the sauerkraut vegetable. It's too fibrous at this point. So you just do the juice because what you're doing is you're introducing the probiotics. Yes?
So you basically, in knowing when to go on to the next stage, you just, when you try it, your body will react in a certain way so you know that it's okay to go to the next stage?
It's tricky. It is more of an art than a science, especially these initial phases for sure, because you are having so much detoxification going on. It's hard to tell the right hand from the left. It's like, is this a symptom? Is this a detox? Is this die-off? Is this, is this a reaction to the food? Kind of our gauge was when we could eat that food no longer, like whatever vegetable it was, we're like, we have got to move on. Like, we can't eat any more zucchini without something else with it, That was kind of our gauge at the beginning, but you will get to a point where you will know very clearly. We didn't introduce butternut squash and acorn squashes, like the winter squashes that are a little bit higher in starch, until about 6 weeks into the diet. And we had, past the first week of the diet, we had no bloating and gas. And the minute we ate butternut squash, bloating and gas came back. So we just knew, we're like, that's a pretty clear symptom. So we just held off for another month, tried it again, it was great, it was totally fine. So there might be really clear symptoms for you. Usually, if you have really severe digestive issues, if you have a reaction to a food, it could cause diarrhea. That's a pretty clear symptom of hold off, you're not quite ready for that. But I mean, if you try something and you just get really, really ill, it's probably, like say your probiotic, for example, or the sauerkraut juice, if it makes you really ill, it's probably too much detoxification too fast. So you hold off. Again, when I say extremes, we introduced sauerkraut juice 1/4 of a teaspoon at a time. We went 1/4 of a teaspoon for 3 days. Then we went 1/4 of a teaspoon twice a day for 3 days. And then we went to a teaspoon. I mean, we were very methodical about it. But honestly, I know most people probably aren't going to do that. But I don't know. I was not kidding around about it when we started g.a.p.s. So we went that slow. But my son was very, very, very sensitive too. So you can kind of gauge it. If you've already been eating fermented foods and been on probiotics, you may be able to go a little faster. Some people start their supplements prior to starting g.a.p.s, just so their bodies are they kind of know where their body's at with the supplements so that they're not competing with the food and the supplements at the same time. So that's an idea. Okay, ginger tea is another thing that's recommended. That's phase 1. Some people go through that in 2 or 3 days. We spent probably about a week and a half to 2 weeks there and moved on because we needed new food, which was eggs. And we had typically been very allergic to eggs before, and were beautifully surprised to learn that we could tolerate eggs and have ever since. So when I say we were allergic to eggs, I'm talking like my kids would break out in hives over their bodies allergic to eggs. And in that couple-week period of time, it healed that allergy. I mean, it was amazing to me. So anyway, it's a lot in the method of how you prepare the food too. I mean, at first everything is boiled. And then you go to like not boiling them quite as much to less and less and less over time too. So this says to make casseroles with the broth and meat. I've given you a recipe for what that means. You continue increasing your probiotic and sauerkraut. You add fermented fish. I have not had a ton of success fermenting fish. Mainly, it's hard to get really, really super fresh fish around here. So if anyone's an expert, I'd love to know. But fermented fish is a great idea. We just kind of compensated with other ferments. And then you introduce ghee. I'm going to get into the specifics of dairy introduction shortly, but do you all know what ghee is? Ghee is clarified butter. If you've ever had lobster or crab dipped in that clear butter, that's what ghee is. And essentially, ghee is only the milk fat left. So there's no lactose, there's no casein in it, so which is why it's typically, even someone that has a very severe dairy allergy can typically tolerate ghee. It's an extremely nutrient-dense food, highly, highly beneficial. So ghee is the first dairy food introduced in stage 2. Stage 3 is essentially the same as above. You start cooking your eggs a little bit different. You can add ripe avocado. I know when we started avocado, it didn't go so well. We just waited about another week and it went great. So it's just funny how your body, just at the appropriate time, can suddenly start digesting the food. You start adding the cabbage from the sauerkraut, and you will be amazed how much a 3-year-old will love sauerkraut when he's on g.a.p.s. You might not think your 3-year-old's going to eat it, but oh, he will. Try a small amount of pancakes made with homemade nut butter, eggs, and squash cooked in ghee or animal fat. It took us a long time till we could tolerate nuts. And we had been soaking, sprouting, all of that, our nuts for years, but when we started eating nuts, nut flours, and homemade nut butters, we had a hard time. It was a slow progression for us. But I'm thinking next class, maybe I'll teach you guys how to make homemade nut butters. Okay, this slide, are any of you familiar with live blood analysis? Yeah, you've seen a couple of heads nod? Okay. So I just want you to understand, I put this in between stage 1 and 3 to stage 4 and 6 because oh, you can't see it super good on here, but okay, so I had live blood analysis done the week before we started g.a.p.s. And the naturopathic doctor who did it was like, you, honey, are in trouble. If you see the little white spots in between all of the, well, let me kind of point. If you see the white spots in these cells, that basically is oxygen-starved blood cells. See the white dots here, this is an indicator of, he said, moderate to severe bowel disease. And at that point in time, my stomach hurt constantly. And, you know, despite what I ate, it always hurt. So, and you can see how the little tiny cells are all clumped together in big clumps. That basically means like they're not free floating, which means they're not healthy. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. You can see parasites here. Okay, so we do g.a.p.s. I go back 1 month later, and it is like, I mean, he was so shocked. He ordered Dr. McBride's book while I was there. And he was like, this is the only way. Oh, what have I been doing all these years? I went back, no white in my blood cells. They're free floating, oxygen in them again, inflammatory bowel disease indicators gone. This was 1 month on g.a.p.s. So I'm just showing you that so you can see an actual physical analysis of the healing that was occurring. Now, mind you, at this point, I still didn't feel great. We were tired, we were weak. I mean, exercising was nearly impossible. It was rough. I felt terrible, but the healing was happening. So I'm telling you that to know that you might not feel great, but that doesn't mean it's not working. Don't quit. Okay, so stages 4 through 6. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here because we're going to talk about this next time, but you've got this information here. You can kind of see how the diet builds onto itself. You start adding meats cooked different ways. You start adding more nuts. You even start adding raw or fruits, then raw vegetables, and then eventually raw fruits and vegetables, and then you get into sweet foods. I think that's why some people cruise through the diet, because I will tell you there are some divine sweets on g.a.p.s. So people want to get to 6 really quick, but don't be in too big of a hurry. Okay, so dairy introduction. I think dairy is the biggest variable for people in g.a.p.s as to how they tolerate it. Any dairy product consumed has to be fermented at home yourself for at least 24 hours. Most commercial yogurts that you buy are only fermented for a few hours, so it's not nearly enough time to consume the lactose, and even the casing gets pre-digested in this process. So a lot of this research is in the specific carbohydrate diet book as to how this happens over the 24-hour period time. Some people who have been off of dairy for a period of time prior to starting g.a.p.s introduce dairy right from the start. Some people wait. We, just like every extreme possible in the diet, waited several months. We waited, I want to say it was probably 8 to 9 months, and then we introduced goat's milk yogurt first and then transitioned to cow's milk yogurt. We tried cows at first. My daughter did okay, my son didn't do so well, so that's why we went to goats. And now he does great. I mean, he's a champ. He loves cow's milk yogurt, has absolutely no problems. So, and my daughter is at the point now she can drink regular cow's milk without it being fermented without a problem. So anyway, when you prepare your yogurt, you need fresh raw milk to prepare the yogurt. We can get into that in another class about how to exactly make the yogurt. One idea that Dr. McBride recommends is a sensitivity test. You drop a little drop of the food, you can dilute it in water, on your wrist or on your child's wrist or whoever you're testing. Rub it around a little, let them sleep, just do it right before they go to bed. If they wake up in the morning with any sort of redness or rash, your body's probably still reacting to that food. So it doesn't work with everything, but it's a good thing to try. You can try it with any food. So Dr. McBride's recommendation is ghee first because there's no lactose, there's no casein, it's just straight milk fat. Ghee first. If you tolerate ghee, go to unsalted butter. If you tolerate butter, then go to yogurt. Do yogurt first, then kefir. You all are familiar with kefir, however you say it. I think kefir is the real way, but it's a lot stronger, it's a lot more aggressive, and causes a lot more detoxification symptoms. So she recommends yogurt first. It's a little more controlled with what bacteria are in it, and then you move on. Then you try homemade cheese. If you tolerate all of those, then after, and she recommends don't even try this until you've been on the diet for a year or two, then you can try some commercially available yogurts. I mean, even my son will buy a commercial yogurt every now and then, and he does fine on them. It comes with time. However, he still doesn't tolerate butter very well. So it might not go exactly in this order for you. If you try butter and it doesn't work, don't be discouraged that you're never going to be able to eat yogurt. It sometimes isn't clockwork. That's the protocol for dairy. So you can decide when the appropriate time is to start introducing that. She does recommend with yogurt that you drip it. Are you familiar with dripping yogurts? Yes? No? So you need just something to drip it in. We drip it in a nut milk bag. Take your yogurt, pour it in here, let the whey drip out, the liquid, and this turns it into like cream cheese almost. You start with the whey, and then you move into the yogurt.